Alright, folks, strap in because we're diving into the wildest late-night TV moment of the year, maybe even the decade. Picture this, it's a balmy June evening in 2025, and Jimmy Kimmel Live is buzzing with its usual mix of celebrity guests, quirky sketches, and that signature Kimmel charm. The guest for the night, none other than the legendary Steve Martin, comedy icon, banjo virtuoso, and star of Only Murders in the Building. The audience is hyped, the house band Cleto and the Cletones are jamming, and Jimmy's ready to deliver his monologue with that sly grin we all know. But what starts as a routine episode quickly spirals into chaos that nobody saw coming. Steve Martin, the guy who's been making us laugh since the 70s with his wild and crazy guy shtick, is about to turn the El Capitan Entertainment Center upside down. Now, if you've followed Steve, you know he's the king of deadpan, a master of wit who can steal a scene with a single raised eyebrow. He's been on Kimmel before, often with his buddy Martin Short, and their chemistry is comedy gold. But this time, there's no Martin Short to play the straight man, and things get heated fast. The show kicks off with Jimmy doing his thing, roasting politicians and cracking jokes about the latest Hollywood gossip. He mentions Steve's new banjo single, 5 Days Out, 2 Days Back, performed with Alison Brown and Tim O'Brien, and the crowd cheers. Steve's out there to promote the song and maybe talk about Only Murders Season 5, but something's off. You can feel the tension as soon as he walks on stage, dressed in his signature sharp suit, banjo in hand, with that mischievous glint in his eye. Jimmy starts with some light banter, asking Steve about turning 80, his new book, and how he's still shredding the banjo like a bluegrass rock star. But Steve's responses are curt, almost prickly, and the audience senses it. Jimmy, ever the pro, tries to keep it light, joking about Steve's grumpy old man vibe, but Steve fires back with a zinger about Jimmy's monologue being recycled from 2018. Ouch! The crowd gasps, then laughs nervously. Jimmy's smile falters, but he rolls with it, tossing out a quip about Steve's banjo being out of tune. Big mistake. Steve's eyes narrow, and he leans forward, saying, "You wanna talk out of tune? Let's talk about your ratings, pal." The studio goes silent. You could hear a pin drop in the Hollywood Hills. Jimmy tries to pivot, asking about Steve's recent Hollywood Bowl gig, but Steve's not having it. He launches into a tirade about how late-night TV's lost its edge, how it's all predictable gags and softball interviews. "Back in my day, we took risks, Jimmy. We didn't just pander to the TikTok crowd." The audience is stunned, some cheering, some booing, as Jimmy's face turns red. He tries to laugh it off, but Steve's on a roll, calling out the show's reliance on safe humor and even dragging Guillermo Rodriguez into it, saying, "Even your sidekick's funnier than you tonight." Poor Guillermo, just standing there with his tequila bottle, looks like he wants to crawl under the desk. The tension's so thick you could cut it with a banjo string, and the producers are sweating in the control room. This isn't the scripted, feel-good interview they planned. Steve's not just poking fun, he's poking the bear, and Jimmy's not used to being upstaged like this. The crowd's eating it up, though, because who doesn't love a good showdown? Social media's already blowing up. Hex posts are flying with hashtags like #SteveMartinRoastsKimmel and #LateNightClash. People are live tweeting, "Did Steve Martin just end Jimmy Kimmel on his own show?" It's chaos, pure chaos, and we're just getting started. By the time the first commercial break hits, the internet's on fire, and everyone's wondering, what's gonna happen when they come back? Is Steve gonna double down? Or will Jimmy find a way to take back control? One thing's clear, this is no ordinary episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Welcome back to the madness, because things are about to go from bad to worse on Jimmy Kimmel Live. The commercial break did nothing to cool the flames, and as the cameras roll again, Steve Martin's still sitting there, banjo across his lap, looking like he's ready to drop another bombshell. Jimmy, trying to regain his footing, decides to steer the conversation to safer ground as Steve's new book. Steve Martin writes the written word. He asks about the inspiration behind it, probably hoping for a wholesome story about creativity or whatever. But Steve's not biting. He leans back, smirks, and says, "You know, Jimmy, I wrote a book because I figured people might actually read something smarter than your cue cards. The audience erupts, so half in laughter, half in shock. Jimmy's jaw tightens, and you can see he's fighting to keep his cool. He's hosted everyone from A-listers to politicians, dealt with hecklers and weirdos, but this is Steve Martin, comedy royalty, tearing into him like he's an open mic newbie. Jimmy tries to pivot again, bringing up only murders in the building, thinking maybe a plug for Hulu will smooth things over. So, Steve, you and Martin Short and Selena Gomez, how's season 5 going? He asks, forcing a grin. Steve just rolls his eyes and says, "It's great, Jimmy, but let's not pretend you've watched it. You're probably too busy Googling how to be funny before every show." The crowd loses it, and even Cleto's band can't help but snicker. At this point, Jimmy's had enough. He drops the nice guy act and fires back. "You know, Steve, for a guy who's 80, you're acting like a cranky toddler. Maybe you should stick to playing banjo at the senior center." The audience gasps. This is Jimmy Kimmel throwing punches now. Steve doesn't flinch, though. He picks up his banjo, strums a quick riff, and says, "At least I've got talent to fall back on." What's your backup plan when ABC pulls the plug? Oh, man, the studio's a powder keg, and that line lights the fuse. The crowd's cheering, booing, tweeting. It's pandemonium. X is exploding with clips of the exchange, and people are picking sides like it's a boxing match. Some are Team Steve, loving his savage takedowns, while others are Team Jimmy, defending their late-night hero. The producers are freaking out, waving frantically from offstage, probably regretting not booking a safer guest like AOB or Seth Rogen. Jimmy tries to move on, introducing a clip from Steve's new single, 5 Days Out, 2 days back, hoping the music will diffuse the situation. But Steve's not done. He interrupts the clip setup, saying, "Why don't we just play it live, Jimmy? Unless you're scared I'll upstage your whole show." The gauntlet's thrown, and Jimmy, visibly rattled, agrees. Steve calls out Alison Brown and Tim O'Brien, who were waiting in the wings, and they launch into a blistering performance right there on the Kimmel stage. The music's incredibly. Steve's banjo is on fire, Alison's picking is unreal, and Tim's vocals are soulful as ever. The audience is mesmerized, momentarily forgetting the drama. But as soon as the song ends, Steve takes the mic and says, "That's how you do entertainment, Jimmy. Maybe take notes." The crowd goes wild, but Jimmy's face is a mix of fury and embarrassment. He tries to laugh it off, saying, "Well, Steve, you're certainly stealing the show tonight," but you can tell he's seething. The producers are signaling to wrap it up, probably praying for a commercial break to save them. On X, fans are posting memes of Jimmy looking defeated and Steve strumming his banjo like a victorious gladiator. The #KimmelClash is trending worldwide, and people are calling this the most unhinged late-night moment since Kanye's infamous GMA outburst. But the real question is, can this get any worse? Spoiler alert, it absolutely can, and it's about to. We're deep in the chaos now, and the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage is a battlefield. Steve Martin's relentless roasting has turned the show into a viral spectacle, and Jimmy's fighting to keep his dignity intact. After that scorching banjo performance, you'd think Steve might ease up, let the crowd enjoy the music, and call it tonight. Nope, he's doubled down, and the next segment is where things go completely off the rails. Jimmy, desperate to regain control, tries to shift to a pre-planned beat, a goofy game show sketch called Banjo Trivia where Steve and Guillermo compete to answer questions about bluegrass music. It's supposed to be lighthearted, a chance for laughs and maybe a cute moment with Guillermo stealing the spotlight. But Steve's not playing along. He interrupts the first question, saying, "This is the best you could come up with. A game show? What is this, 1985?" The audience laughs, but it's tensy. Jimmy's clearly annoyed, and Guillermo's just trying to read his cue cards without crying. Steve starts riffing, turning the game into his own comedy routine, answering every question with absurd, hilarious non sequiturs about his days on SNL or his love for egg poachers. The crowd's eating it up, but Jimmy's not amused. He snaps, "You know, Steve, some of us are trying to run a show here. Maybe you'd like to host it?" It's meant as a jab, But Steve takes it literally, standing up and saying, "You know what, Jimmy, maybe I will." Before anyone can stop him, Steve struts over to Jimmy's desk, plops down in the host chair, and starts reading the cue cards like he owns the place. The audience is roaring, X is going berserk with clips of Steve taking over the show, and the producers are probably calling ABC execs in a panic. Jimmy, now relegated to the guest couch, tries to play along, but you can see the steam coming out of his ears. Steve's in full control, cracking jokes about Jimmy's pastatina recipe and even impersonating Jimmy's signature laugh. Guillermo, bless his heart, tries to keep up, but he's caught in the crossfire of this comedy coup. Then Steve takes it to another level, announcing, "Let's bring out the next guest. Oh wait, I'm the only one worth watching tonight." The crowd's losing it, but Jimmy's had enough. He stands up, grabs the mic, and says, "All right, Steve, you've had your fun. Maybe it's time to take your banjo and go." The audience gasps. This is the moment the title promised. Steve, unfazed, fires back, "Kick me off, Jimmy. I'm the best thing that's happened to your ratings since you cried about healthcare." It's a low blow, referencing Jimmy's emotional monologue about his son Billy's heart surgery. The crowd splits. Some cheer for Steve's audacity, others boo for crossing a line. Jimmy's face goes dark, and he says, "You know what, Steve, maybe you should leave." The producers cut to commercial, but the damage is done. X is flooded with reactions, some calling Steve a savage, others saying he went too far. Posts are flying, "Steve Martin just owned Kimmel. And Jimmy didn't deserve that low blow." The internet's divided, with memes of Steve's banjo and Jimmy's angry face going viral. Backstage, rumors swirl that security was called, though nobody's sure if Steve was actually kicked off or if it was all for show. Either way, the clash is legendary, and every late-night fan is glued to their screen, waiting for the next act. Will Steve walk off, or is there one final twist? Hang tight, because this roller coaster's not over. As the final segment of Jimmy Kimmel Live begins, the studio's electric with anticipation. Did Steve Martin really get kicked off, or is this all some elaborate stunt? The cameras come back from commercial, and Jimmy's back at his desk, looking like he's aged a decade in 5 minutes. Steve's still there, sitting on the guest couch, banjo in hand, smirking like he's won an Oscar for chaos. The audience is on edge, and X is still buzzing with reactions. Clips of the kickoff moment are racking up millions of views, and hashtags like #Steve vs Jimmy and #Kimmel Meltdown are trending globally. Jimmy tries to reset, saying, "All right, folks, let's get back to the show. Steve, you've made your point. Ready to behave?" Steve just shrugs and says, "Only if you admit I'm funnier." The crowd laughs, but Jimmy's not playing anymore. He launches into a monologue about respect, saying, "I've hosted this show for over 20 years, and I've never had a guest try to tank it like this." It's a rare serious moment for Jimmy, and the audience feels the weight. Steve, sensing the shift, dials back the hostility and says, "All right, Jimmy, I'll give you these. You've got guts to keep up with me." It's a half apology, half dig, and the crowd eats it up. Jimmy seizes the chance to wrap things up, introducing a final performance of 5 Days Out. 2 days back with Alison Brown and Tim O'Brien. The trio takes the stage, and it's a showstopper. Steve's banjo weaves perfectly with Alison's picking and Tim's soulful voice, turning the tension into pure musical magic. The audience gives a standing ovation, and for a moment, it feels like the clash might end on a high note. But as the credits roll, Steve can't resist one last jab, leaning into the mic and saying, "Tune in tomorrow unless Jimmy's still crying." Backstage, the crowd erupts, and Jimmy just shakes his head, laughing despite himself. The show cuts to black, but the internet's far from done. X is a wartson of opinions. Some say Steve was a jerk, others call him a genius for turning a standard talk show appearance into a viral moment. Clips of the kickoff exchange are dissected on every platform, with YouTubers and TikTokers analyzing every quip and expression. Some speculate it was all scripted, pointing to Steve and Jimmy's long history of playful banter, while others swear it was real, citing Jimmy's genuine frustration. The next day, Steve posts on X, "Had a blast on Kimmel last night. Sorry if I broke Jimmy's show. Send him a banjo to cheer him up." Jimmy fires back with, "Thanks, Steve. Next time, I am booking Martin Short instead." The feud, real or not, keeps the internet buzzing for weeks. Fans start petitions for Steve to guest host, while others demand an apology for Jimmy. The performance of 5 Days Out, 2 days back climbs the charts, fueled by the controversy, and Only Murders in the Building gets a ratings boost. Late-night TV hasn't seen drama like this since Letterman and Leno's feud, and it's a reminder that Steve Martin, at 80, is still a comedic force who can steal the spotlight and maybe, just maybe, break a show in the process. So, what's the truth? Was it a clash for the ages or a masterclass in viral marketing? You tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more wild TV moments.